Histobiograph.
She was the 12th bride, and she knew she wouldn't see the sunrise. The castle bells chimed midnight as her footsteps echoed along the corridor of wedding portraits, each painting more faded than the last. Her fingers brushed against the golden frame of the 11th bride, the last one to vanish, her smile still untouched by time, though her fate had been sealed in blood. It had become a tradition no one dared question. Every decade, a king without a name would choose a bride without a voice. 12 times the court had clapped. 12 times the bells had rung. 12 nights and 12 vanished women, all gone by morning. No blood, no trace, no reason. They called it the Crimson Vow. The tale begins in the year 1476, beneath the pale moonlight of a snow-laden kingdom known only as Virelin, a land where winter never ended, where the walls of the royal palace were carved from ice, and where roses bloomed in black, the kind of place that got abandoned long before history did. And in this frozen realm ruled by silence, the only thing colder than the snow was the king himself. His name was never spoken aloud, not even by his scribes, not even by the queens who came before. They said to whisper it was to invite his gaze and to be chosen, because the king did not love. He selected, he collected, and once a woman was chosen, she never returned. Our final bride, the 12th, was not born of nobility. She came from the ash markets of the South, where smoke was currency and laughter was rare. Her name was Lysenna. She was 17, and her eyes held the kind of sorrow that did not come from loss, but from knowing what would be taken. They say the king saw her once beneath a crimson canopy on market day. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. And for that, she was summoned. The invitation was written on vellum stained with a single drop of red wax. No seed, no signature, just a date and a command. Come before the moon weeps. Lysenna arrived at the palace in silence. No escort, no gifts, only a silver comb in her braid, belonging to her mother, and a question in her chest she would never dare ask. On the eve of her wedding, she was dressed in white silk spun with threads of snow fox fur. But when she saw her reflection, the gown looked gray. She touched her own collarbone and whispered, "Will I remember my name tomorrow?" That night, the court danced. Laughter echoed through the marble halls. Yet not one guest met her eyes. Not one soul warned her. Only the old midwife dared approach. She slipped a cold ring into Lysenna's palm and whispered, "If you hear the bells, do not run. Do not scream. Just look behind the mirror." Then she vanished into the crowd like breath and frost. The wedding began. 1,000 candles lit the chapel. The king stood waiting, face veiled behind golden lace, like a ghost too proud to be seen. When he lifted the veil, Lysenna did not flinch. His eyes were the color of stone, empty, eternal. They kissed. The bells rang. And when midnight struck, the portrait painter opened his easel once more. If these stories matter to you, consider subscribing. I've got more memories like this to share. But here's the question that haunted even the palace walls. What if the brides never left? Lysenna did not sleep. After the wedding feast, she was led to the bridal chamber at the top of the ivory spire, a tower so high its windows cut through clouds. No servants accompanied her, just silence and the faint echo of her own breath against the frost-covered walls. The room smelled of rose ash. The fire was already lit, but the flames bent unnaturally to one side, as if afraid of what lay behind them. In the corner, a grand mirror stood, covered with a velvet cloth, and on the bed, a single white lily, already wilting. She touched it. It crumbled. Then came the first whisper. It did not come from the door, or from the walls. It came from inside the mirror. Her fingers hovered over the velvet. The midwife's words returned. If you hear the bells, do not run. Do not scream. Just look behind the mirror. But there were no bells. Only a low hum, like wind dragging across bone. She sat on the edge of the bed, tried to recall her mother's voice. But even that had begun to fade. Instead, what she remembered was her mother's last gift, the silver comb now tucked in her braid. She removed it and noticed something carved on the back, something she'd never seen before. A name, not hers. Fian. The comb slipped from her fingers and landed soundlessly on the marble floor. At that moment, she realized something was watching her. She turned slowly to the mirror. The velvet cloth was still in place, but beneath it movement, a shadow pressed against the fabric from the inside. Fingertips, pale, delicate, like someone trying to push through silk. Then a second hand, then a face. Lysenna did not scream. She stood, heart stilled, and walked to the mirror. Her reflection was gone. Instead, she saw another woman, young, beautiful, eyes wide with terror. The woman mouthed something. Run. But she didn't. She lifted the velvet, and the mirror shattered, not into glass, but into snow. Flakes scattered across the room, soft as breath, cold as truth. When she looked again, the mirror was whole. No cracks, no shadows, no woman. Just her own reflection returned. But something was wrong. The eyes staring back were not hers. Downstairs in the gray hall, the king sat alone beneath the portrait of the first bride. A servant approached and whispered, "Shall I prepare the 12th canvas, your grace?" The king did not respond. Instead, he whispered, "She knows." No one saw Lysenna the next morning, but the 12th portrait was already complete. The painter, pale and trembling, swore that his hands had not moved, that the canvas had been blank when he entered. Yet there it was, her face immortalized, lips parted as if about to speak, eyes filled not with fear, but defiance. Her veil was torn, her silver comb gripped like a dagger. The court remained silent, as they always had. No one searched the bridal chamber. No one questioned why no footsteps had echoed from the ivory spire since midnight. The crimson vow demanded obedience, and obedience in Virelin was stronger than love. But something had shifted. The king, who had never shown sorrow, never missed a feast, ceased to appear. The throne remained empty, the royal table untouched. Days passed. The fires in the great hall died, and the bells, once only rung for weddings and deaths, began tolling every night at the same hour, the hour Lysenna vanished. It was the maids who first noticed. The mirrors, scattered throughout the palace, had begun to behave differently. At first, they simply reflected light oddly. Then, they stopped reflecting people altogether. Those who looked into them saw only snow falling endlessly behind glass. Others claimed they saw figures, women in white, their eyes hollow, their mouths stitched shut with threads of shadow. One maid, young and curious, placed her hand on the surface of a mirror and whispered. Where did she go? Her skin turned cold. Frost bloomed from her fingertips. And when she pulled away, a single word had appeared on the glass in breath fog. Fian. By the third night, 7 staff members had fled. 2 were found days later in the woods, faces frozen in terror. Eyes burst from the inside. The rest simply disappeared. Inside the ivory spire, the air grew thick and stale. Servants claimed they heard footsteps above, pacing back and forth, even though the chamber had been locked from the outside. Then came the blood, not red, but white, thick, milky rivulets that oozed down the spiral staircase from the bridal chamber. When touched, it hissed like snow melting on fire. When bottled, it evaporated. But when poured on the portraits of the past brides, their painted eyes wept. The oldest member of the court, a withered advisor who once served the king's grandfather, was summoned. He entered the chapel where the wedding had been held and stood beneath the grand chandelier. In silence, he opened an old scroll, sealed with a wax sigil none recognized. It contained the forgotten verses of the Crimson Vow. 12 shall wed, but none shall stay. The mirror keeps what flesh betrays. A name once stolen, a soul once sworn. The bride returns when silence is torn. The advisor, shaking, whispered she broke the vow. And with that, the chandelier fell. Crushed beneath the iron and glass was a mirror, not one that belonged to the palace. Smaller, framed in bone, and inside it, etched from within, was a scene no one wished to witness. Lysenna, standing in the bridal chamber, her hands outstretched, the shattered veil fluttering like wings, surrounded by 11 other brides, all staring at her, all smiling, not in joy, but in release, as if for the first time they were no longer alone. Winter did not return to Virelin, not fully. The snow that once blanketed the palace grounds melted slowly, but the cold remained. The kind of cold that no fire could burn away. The kind of cold that seeped into mirrors, into portraits, into names long erased. They sealed the ivory spire, with iron, with prayer, with silence. No one entered again. The doors were chained, the stairwell bricked. The wedding chamber became a ghost's echo, left untouched. Still, some swore they heard whispers from the highest window when the wind turned sharp, 12 voices reciting a vow no longer bound. The king never reappeared. His throne was draped in mourning silk, though no one declared him dead. No coronation followed. The court dissolved. Ministers fled. The kingdom splintered. But the mirrors remained. One by one, they were removed from the palace, buried in salt-lined tombs beneath the frozen river. Yet even in exile, they changed. When moonlight hit their surface, some said you could see her, Lysenna, not as a bride, but as something else. Something watching, not waiting. In a village far from the capital, a boy found an old silver comb buried beneath the roots of a tree. He brought it to his grandmother, who screamed and threw it into the fire. It did not burn. A traveling monk, lost in the northern woods, found a chapel built entirely from ice. Inside, 12 portraits hung in a perfect circle. But when he tried to count them, he always saw 13. Years passed. The story of the 12 brides became legend, then myth, then bedtime warning. Brush your hair before bed, or the mirror bride will come. But the 13th canvas, blank, silent, was never found. Until one morning, in the year 1624, a new portrait appeared in the gallery of forgotten kings. The guards insisted they had never seen it before. No artist confessed, but there it was, a woman in white, sitting on a throne made of glass. Her veil lifted, her eyes open, her lips slightly parted. And this time, the nameplate beneath was not empty. It read, Lysenna of Ash. They say that name had never existed before, but somehow everyone remembered it. Maybe it was never about the brides. Maybe it was the name that cursed them. Maybe she was the first to remember. Was she truly evil, or simply the only one who refused to forget? Let me know in the comments what you believe, because some stories do not fade. They only wait, behind the glass.